All right.
So in the post-Michael Jordan era, and as a matter of fact, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but when Michael Jordan was still playing 30 years ago, they had their highest watched regular season ever, okay? It hasn't happened since 30 years later. And that's probably says something about the NBA. And, you and I have talked about load management and all the rest of this, but they were averaging, 3 million plus viewers back then in 1998. They immediately dropped. The last 20 years, the NBA now is 1.5 to 1.9 million viewers is what we're seeing. So you could almost say it's been cut pretty close in half. As a matter of fact, 49% in the last 25 years. It's down 16% in the last 5 years. And it gives you a little bit of an idea. But there is still a lot of money in the NBA. And you and I are money guys. So I wanted to run this one by you. So Glenn Taylor bought the Timberwolves for $88 million to keep the Timberwolves in Minnesota. $88 million. I didn't have a B anywhere in there. I just wanted to make sure that we got that. So A-Rod, in this case, Rodriguez, Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lurie, they went in to try to buy this team not too terribly long ago, but it's been a fight ever since because they missed a payment, John. $1.5 billion off of that $88 million. But here's the interesting part. I don't know if they'll ever start coming down, and they've talked about expanding the NBA 2 more, maybe putting one in Vegas, one somewhere else. But I think the interesting thing about all of this, John, is there are a lot of franchises. When you look at the NBA, you're talking about $4.6 billion is the average of what the NBA value is right now. $4.6 billion. These guys paid $1.5 billion. They might be able to flip this thing if they chose to do that. And they've got Bloomberg with them too, John, in case they have to get some cash really fast. They've got Bloomberg as part of this whole thing. But it's pretty interesting. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what do you think about this? I don't understand how the NBA teams, John, are worth $4.6 billion on average. I just don't see that at all. And a lot of this is estimates, right? So is somebody out there really willing to buy into the NBA, or are they just manufacturing these numbers in some way? What do you think? Because I don't think it's as high as they're saying it is.
Well, Pete, they used to say that the most exclusive club in the world was the United States Senate, because there's obviously 2 senators, 50 states, there's 100 senators. Yeah. Well, there's a hell of a lot less than that owners of these, NBA teams.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, there are multiple owners like Pete just described, folks. But in many cases, it's a single owner. Ballmer, for instance, Steve Ballmer. Now, I don't know that he's allocated any shares to anybody other than himself, but he is the reason that these things are trading for the billions that they're trading for. Because had he not paid that stupid number, Pete, for his team, we would not be seeing these, is my belief, because it's not justifiable. NFL, it is justifiable, only because they have, what is it, Pete, 51 or 52% of the revenue goes to the players, and the rest goes to the owners. And of course, they don't count some of their revenue. Now, they always get renegotiated into on the next contract, but they don't always share the skybox revenue. They don't always share the jerseys and things like that are sold within their confines and all that kind of stuff. But I will say, Pete, no way. They're not worth it.
Me neither.
You can't make a case to me that any NBA team is worth $4.6 billion. But I will say that Adelson, who bought 73% of Mark Cuban's team, she's going to move it back to Vegas. So if somebody wants to be in Vegas, they better do it soon, because when Mark Cuban started popping off in a very liberal fashion, you know what happened? They said, you ain't getting a casino down here. And that's the reason she bought in, was she wants a casino around the team, around basically an experiential area, Pete, with a hotel, casino, basketball team, and so forth. Develop the whole thing right there in Dallas. Well, Texas is pretty deep red. And Cuban kind of pissed him off, and I don't think he's ever getting a casino down there, Pete. So I bet that one moves to Vegas.
Yeah. If they can. Yeah, the NBA wants to not have somebody move there, but maybe they can work it out. Maybe they can figure out how they can get that done. It'll be interesting to watch anyway. John, back to college football for a moment. We talk about sports all the time at college level. We talk about the NIL stuff. We talk about all of these various things. How about the portal? Now, a lot of people aren't very familiar with this whole thing, but there's a GM role now these days in college sports, college football particularly. And most of the schools, I think most of the very successful schools, have really jumped onto this thing, and for the right reasons. So I'll bet you can't guess who it is that has had the most success in the portal this year since December 9th. Is it Texas? It's not Texas. Is it USC? It's not USC. Is it Michigan? Is it Texas A&M with all their money and everything else to be able to go out there and grab people in the portal? No. It's Texas Tech of all this. Texas Tech has had the most success, John. They were very close this year in the Big 12. They had a good run at it. They didn't get there. How about this for some of their numbers? They have 7 of the top 75 transfers have gone to the school. They signed 17 kids to move to come back either to Texas or to bring them to Texas to play for Texas Tech. And that all started December 9th. They got a general manager out there, John, by the name of James Blanchard. And he basically said, hey, look, I've got the magical thing on how to get these kids to come here. And one of those magical parts of it is the money. And so they just immediately just went to one of their biggest donors and said, what's the most you can give us? He goes, I want a winner. He goes, yeah, but what's the most? He goes, pretty much unlimited. He gave him $10 million, John, and just said, go spend it. He did. And Notre Dame said, this guy's done such a good job. They offered him a job. He said, well, you can't pay me enough at Notre Dame because I'm getting paid so much here at Texas Tech. It doesn't really matter. So he did not go. He's still at Texas Tech. 90% of what he said he does on a day in and day out basis, John, is just collecting information, not watching film, not doing this, just trying to get any information about all these players. And I think it's a really interesting role to see how these general managers, each one is doing something different. But Texas Tech, John, that is a team, that's a school that we all need to keep a very close eye on because it won't just end with just football. They're going to do it in basketball. They're going to go into all the various sports that they can and go out there and out-recruit everybody. And it's really interesting, I think, to see what's going on in college sports with these general managers that are basically just like the NFL. I mean, NCAA has turned into the NFL. It really has.
Well, and you've made that point very well, Pete, for a better part of a year. The portal, well, that's free agency.
Yeah.
NIL, well, that's your payroll. As good as they do, Pete, I think it's still going to be tough for them to outcompete Ohio State.
Yep.
Because Ohio State, now that they got that unbelievable season behind them, even though they lost 2 games, the fact that they came back through the playoffs and just decimated everybody, that they played in there. That is going to be a tough team to beat.
Yeah.
And tough team to out-recruit. Yeah. But as you said, if you get 7 of the top 75, a 10% thing like that, that's pretty damn good. And it's just like when we talk about Myles Garrett, you only have to have a few really big impact players. The video that Jared just ran for us of Cooper DeJean, the kid runs a 4.15. So there's no way in heck Mahomes thought when he threw that ball sideways as he did, that any D-back could break on that ball as he did. Because you saw that his wide receiver was sliding to make that catch just off the ground. And meanwhile, Cooper just made a plant and went. And if you have that, again, you can't defend speed. And if you have somebody like that, you can dominate. And Myles Garrett is a player like that, just like Cooper DeJean. And man, it's amazing though, Cooper being whatchamacallit, Pete, a rookie in his rookie year. And by the way, I already said 39 years, Pete. Nobody had drafted a white defensive back in the first round in 39 years. How about this stat also? No rookie had a pick six in a Super Bowl in 39 years. It has happened, but it's been 39 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's a talented kid. That defense, that offense. I mean, you can't say enough good things about what Philadelphia has been able to do. You got to give Howie all the credit in the world because he has put it together. He drafted those guys. He drafted all those guys from Georgia. He did all of the homework that he needed to do to build the team that they've got, and it's pretty damn impressive. Now, every year's a new year, injuries, this, that, and the other, and drafts, and somebody else maybe makes a really good move. There's a lot going on in the world, John, talking about quarterbacks, by the way, and Matthew Stafford's name keeps coming up every single day, and it's kind of interesting because here he is, a Ram, and he's still their quarterback, but it gets talked about every day on ESPN, on the radio, or on TV, or wherever, about what are some of the landing spots of Sam Darnold and some of these other players, and it's getting pretty interesting right now, which just plays into the NFL 24/7, 365. That's what they are, John.